Okay, so yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and we have Dharmesh over here. Dharmesh is an architect, graduate from CEPT. Okay, we both were classmates actually, more of a good friends as well. Okay, and Dharmesh has been doing really good works with respect to fabrication, and having come from the lane of architecture and also doing a lot of like fabrication works with having his own studio and also doing works for designers and making them really good and workable, and also exploring a lot of things with respect to the machine learning and everything, no? It was very interesting, and it was very much good for our subject that we are currently dealing. Okay, the elective of product design right now. So for us, being like architecture students, and also thinking about like why majorly a product design or something, this lecture would be like really good for understanding, and also understanding how Damish has been doing his works. Thank you for accepting the offer, and then like giving the talk, Damish. And like on regards with the principal and RV College of Architecture, and along with my other co-faculty, Amanat sir. So we welcome you, and then yeah, I'm handing it over
Thank
to
you,
you.
Gautam.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I see Mayank. That's
Yeah,
very
hi.
surprising. Hi, Mayank.
Hi,
Oh,
man.
So
small
you're all
world.
classmates, so
Uh,
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Good
very
to see
small
you. Good to
world.
see you.
Hello, everyone.
Happy to see
Good
your work.
afternoon. Yeah, it's good to see Gautam, Mayank, and everyone
Yes.
else.
Also, have your videos on, no? So it'll be more interactive for the beginning. Yes, Dharmesh, carry on. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do that. So hello everyone. I think Gautam has already given a brief introduction about me. I've been involved with these fabrication things, furniture products since a few years, and as far as I've been informed, I assume you all are fourth sem students, which is second year, right? And you all have an elective regarding product design. It's good to see actually a lot of colleges doing this. I don't remember back at our bachelor's there was anything such. Only if it was, I mean, maybe I would have been faster to cope up with everything else that we are struggling with. Uh, I won't waste much time. I'll just begin with my presentation. Just bear with me. Just hold on for a while. Yeah, to give access. Oh, I'll have to read. So sorry for that.
No problem, Dharmesh. Yeah.
No, it seems I can. Okay. You able to see my screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Dharmesh. Yeah, we can.
Okay. All right. So the title of the presentation, today's presentation, is Additive Manufacturing and Product Design. Uh, y'all can stop me, the students, whenever you feel something is going off. If you have questions, we will have time in the end. But speaking about additive manufacturing, if it were simply put, how is it different? You would ask, what is this term, and what's going on around here? Now, hold on. Yeah. So we see it all comes under one common roof of digital fabrication, which is something to do with creating your model entirely on software, that is on a CAD program, and then getting it on a machine. Uh, so it's broadly under three types. The first is 3D printing, which we'll be talking about today. The other is CNC milling or routing, which is cutting through the material. And is the whole screen is there, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah,
I
it's
see
it's
that.
visible. It's visible, Dharmesh. Yeah.
It's fine. Okay. So CNC milling or routing is to do with 2.53 or 4-axis movements, and then we have something which is an arm, a robotic arm, which goes up to 6 or even 8 axis. You'd wonder how many more axes do we need. I've never seen something more than 4 axis or probably three. That's how we've studied physics or geometry. And now the more number of axes is to do with rotary movements. So it's actually literally in air. An arm comes out from the air and you can rotate it in any direction that you want to. 3D printing is, however, limited to 3 axes, which is good enough for us because in the end, what we have is a 3-dimensional product. In terms of those physics of a product or an object, 3 axis is fine. Now, what is different is that when you do laser cutting, when you do CNC milling or routing, you are cutting through the material. When you do additive manufacturing, you are creating the material. So before 3D printing, if I was to explain it to someone, I would say I need to make a mold for certain product that I've been working on. Let's say all the plastic items that we've seen up till now, your home appliances, mixers, coolers, the body of every appliance in the market or in the world that you see has been casted out of a mold in some or the other process. Now, the advantage here is that I do not need a mold. I do not need to source for someone who will give me a mold in metal and then probably ask me when will it be profitable. It will be profitable after I make 10,000s or a lakh pieces of that product according to its scale. What 3D printing does is it does not want you to create the mold, but it creates the product right in front of you without finding a manufacturer, without investing in a huge plant, without a factory workshop. You can do it right now at the comfort of your home, just next to your laptop. I don't think there is anything greater than that, and I don't think why we should not make the switch. I don't know why or what should stop us. So just to understand, most of so the digital fabrication skills we knew until long are processes which involve cutting through, as I've mentioned, either give perforations, or if you are working with a certain kind of a machine part, then you will have slots. You will have joineries in wood if you're making furniture, which will go, you've learned wood joineries, which click or link into one another. So that was the process until when someone actually figured out that what if I could create the entire piece of maybe wood by myself in some, obviously in plastic as an alteration. Then that is additive. I am adding materials on it. And 3D printing is the simplest and I should say only form of digital fabrication that deals with additive manufacturing. So the traditional processes were to make a die, source out materials, mostly in metal. Metal used to be expensive, heavy. Only skilled people with a setup could do it. And 3D printing is like, some school kid can do it. It's not even for people who are qualified to do something. Anyone could do it. That's a flowchart, a sort of flowchart that explains you the process of how it would be done before or how it is done even today. Now look at the right part of the chart, wherein when we start with digital fabrication, we barely have 4 steps. The first is your drawing. We all are slaves of AutoCAD, so we are damn good at that in practice or in college. So we have the drawing prepared for us. Now if I want to make a physical model, even in college or offices, I will have to prepare another drawing for it. I cannot use the same drawing because I can't. Even if I had to laser cut it, for instance, I have to make a separate drawing for laser cutting a model. I cannot use the same CAD file. So it is not wrong to say that AutoCAD is no good use to me apart from plotting. If I don't have to print the drawing, AutoCAD is doing nothing good for me. Now, this is where fabrication comes into place, and these new softwares which deal with not only drafting but giving you accurate drawings so that the same set of drawings can be used to actually get your product made. So the next step is slicing. Slicing is a term used for 3D printing. It what it does is it slices your 3D model into separate layers. That is how the machine reads your drawing. So it works by depositing a layer at a time. Think of it as, in a very basic layman's term, making jalebis. The only difference is you control the hand with a machine, because when you do it, you get weird shapes. So if there was a way to control that shape, the spiral of the jalebi, what if I could make a rigid square jalebi? That's exactly what 3D printing does. Only that the head is controlled by a machine. There is no input required by you. Tool path would be in case of a CNC or a laser cutting uh, job. You would give the machine a tool path such that it converts the CAD software would convert it into coordinates, because the machine would work with numbers, not language, not drawing. The machine does not know what you've drawn. It needs coordinates. So the software does that for you. And then you input it to the machine and you have the exact scale model that you imagine. You can measure it with measure tapes, vernier calipers. You can weigh it on a machine. It will exactly be the way it had shown you in the preview. And now let's shift back to the left portion, wherein how would we do it without this additive manufacturing or digital fabrication. So we stopped at creating a separate drawing for the model. Okay, I create a separate set of drawings. Maybe that doesn't take time. Then I will go on and source various materials. As a student, I mean, we don't have a lot of options than a file card. The cheapest one to work with, probably thermocol, which is also banned right now. Foam boards. Then I'll take separate hours. I will plan hours and efforts so that before the jury, my model has to be ready, right? So maybe 1 week of it goes into model making, or even on a even if for a project I'd give a time 2 weeks for model making something, and it's entirely human labor. So a part of my office is actually making models, while a part of my office is maybe working on the existing design to figure out if we can change something. And while you are doing this, your model is being made by someone else. So there is no way you can, in the process of making the model, continue to iterate your design. Then you retry, fix some parts, it works or maybe it doesn't work because it's all manual. Then you assemble the model. Then what you get is something close to accurate or a scale model that we call, nowhere near to the precision that probably we wanted to have. That's the process we deal with. Since the talk is related to product design, I thought it would be interesting and relative. This is the process of making a simple lamp, a desk lamp. This is not my work, by the way. It's by a firm UIDO Design, a very good product design firm. It's based somewhere in Argentina. They make amazing products, mostly 3D printed, which is why I have this example here. So we have these prototypes, a lot of prototypes. Now, if I have to, the next step is I need to find a manufacturer. I have to make this lamp I've been working on since I don't know how many weeks or months. Now, what you do if you were to find some manufacturer for a piece of desk lamp in plastic? Again, these many units have to be made. Only then I'll make a mold. Oh, now how do we do this the new way? That's the render. You have a drawing, you have a render. It's rendered in Blender. The Blender is a nice light app for rendering. Also works great with product designers these days. That's the 3D printed body of the lamp, and you see there are some other 3D printed products in the background. On the right is a very simple, the cheapest Chinese 3D printer that was available. Um, but it's very ugly if you look at it. You look at it, look at the other options in the market. And that's the body. That's the assembled body, entirely out of plastic. This is all 3D printed, and this is not a prototype. This is actually the final product. So when it hits the market, it's a 3D printed product which is selling in the market. It is never cast or never finalized or made into a good plastic or nothing. If you see the finish, it is only limited by the machine's capabilities. Otherwise, the better the machine, the better the finish. Yeah, I mean, nothing bad about it. If we are able to achieve that, I think we're able to achieve everything we envisioned for in the first place. Now, how does it benefit? I mean, okay, technology, I'll be buying a machine, I'll have to sacrifice a certain amount of space and all. Uh, so the very first idea is creating prototypes within planned time. You know exactly how much time your product is going to take to make or to manufacture. you have the exact count. You can leave the machine at night, and tomorrow morning when you wake up, you have the product at your desk. So you are not working with the machine. If you do it in the day, you are working simultaneously with along with the machine, and probably you are working on your next product, next prototype. It saves up a lot of time. It saves all the time, in fact. You can create products at the comfort of a small space, your own office, or even your own residence, your own home. Just a table, just a small desk is all you need. It saves a lot of time in manual, obviously, sourcing materials, assembling them, creating iterations. All of that is gone. So the entire process after creating a drawing is dead. It's a big hole. You don't need that. Create a drawing, feed it to the machine, and you have a product. And obviously, you can simultaneously keep working. So should we upgrade or not is the question. Why make the move or why not make the move? So this is a simple comparison of like a checklist. Okay, fine, take or cross. So we need to create separate drawings. The same model is used, entirely labor consuming the conventional method. Someone has to sit, a team has to sit and assemble your line of products, and the machine does all the stuff for you with very less monitoring. Updates in the design need to be remodeled in physical space. If you were to add features on your product or your model, just imagine doing it on an architectural model, adding windows, editing doors, or something like that. um, we need to break pieces and then adjust. The drawing here can be adjusted. Parts of it can be cut and fixed exactly where you want it to. Precision is limited due to everything being done by us, human intervention. While in the machine world, everything is precise up to the precision of zero point 0.1 mm or at the most zero point 0.5 mm, which is not bad. I don't think anyone would be able to make out that small of a difference. Now let's look at what people have been doing, what I have been doing. Why should we? It's good if we only see examples. Doesn't make any sense if I keep talking here for hours. Um, so this is a store, an online store, exclusive online store somewhere. It's being operated online. So what they do is they create only 3D printed products. And if you look at the products, they are all your household products. Nothing fancy, nothing exclusive. Pots, pencil holders, lamps, desk trays, utensils, probably even something keychains, everything that you need in your entire day. They are 3D printing it and providing it to you, which you can do it again. You can buy the digital files. You don't need to buy the products. You pay for the file, you print it at your home, and you're done. um, we can start doing is at least remodel these products, and then that's the next stage of design. That's the easiest, right? We look at amazing structures by great designers, and then we try to copy that, and then we think, okay, now I have to change something in this. So for a start, I mean, why not? Unless you don't look at something, you don't know what can be made. That's one possibility. The next is an architecture example, because we are all budding architects here. This is the paneling of an office, a commercial corporate office by Nuru Karim. If you've never heard of him, I would really encourage you all to look at his works. He is doing something very crazy on some other level, entirely involved with digital fabrication, and recently he has been experimenting with 3D printing. Now that you see is a 3D printed panel inside the interiors of an office. Now look at the pattern and look at the amount of amazing light that it is able to throw in the second image, and look at the the morphing physics or geometry of that panel. Now again, if I was to do this in metal, maybe in fiber, not in metal, because it's not plain. I would have to cast each and every piece, each and every square grade of this panel. I had to bend it. If it were metal, uh, I mean, you know how much labor it involves. How would we do that? We need to create a lot of jigs. We need to create a lot of molds.
360 degree was done. So
And
I'm sending you the link. Just see it.
Someone's
It
mic.
serves our purpose.
Sorry, Dharmesh, you can
Okay.
continue.
Yeah. So now 3D printing gives me the freedom of doing any number of perforations I want. The amount of light, wherever I want the light to enter, I can control it. The panels right now in market that you get are very typical. Someone will probably give you 4 to 5 designs and they'll say, okay, let's fill up the entire facade with this. But what if the panel ends up being placed at a spot where I don't need light and it fills it with bright light? Here, every panel is controlled. I can control the pattern on each panel and make it different, because I mean, it doesn't take much time for me and it's all being printed right in front of me. So that's one use. Until we thought maybe, a 3D printer can only create something I can keep on my desk, or something small that I can wear, probably jewelry people have done. But no, now all of that is evolving in some other levels. And even if it is the scale is small, we need to find out how it can be used. So that is the answer of that is in the second slide, which is again a project done by Nuru Karim. This is the retail space for high-back lighting. Sure, all of us are aware of the brand. And what better than covering the facade of a lighting store with lights? uh, yeah, but then if we could take normal lights, normal bulbs, I mean, there's no fun in that. And if you are Nuru Karim, the hopes are high. So all of these light bulbs are 3D printed right in his office. And you would ask, I would have used normal bulbs. I mean, why would someone do that? If we use normal bulbs, we would not be able to get the pattern, the imprint on those bulbs. If you look closely, they are not a simple white skin bulb. They have a certain texture over it. And I don't think, I've never heard someone making textured filament bulbs. I don't think there's a possibility of doing that, because it's glass and you cannot make so many impressions over it. It has to be flat for a reason that it's just supposed to throw light. So this is a facade of a retail store covered entirely with bulbs. You can lit it the way you want to, but the context involved in it is so huge, and the utility, the way we got around is so simple. There were a lot of probably there are a lot of light bulbs for you to see, but then if a machine is dedicated for doing this, what's the harm? Now that's something I have been doing. These are very old photographs, so please, I'll just go and explain it one by one. The first images of the first 3D printer that I developed on my own. As students, you can do that. You should all do that. I would encourage people to get into building stuff. It's very easy once you figure out all the mechanical components and all of the products you see right here. There are some uh, flower pots, pencil holders, and some iterations of certain furniture pieces I've been working on. And those two superhero models you see in between are a result of when your friends find out you have a 3D printer, and then they know what it does. So no matter how old you are or how young you are, there are always those who want these signature edition pieces, if so it was like I was actually making the machine and one of my friends knew. So this happened in lockdown last year, and we were talking and he had no idea of it. He's into IT, very sorted people, sorted life, scheduled life, very happy people. And then he's like, why the hell are you making a machine? I said it is a different kind of a machine. Then I showed him, I showed him photographs, and then the next day he came up with options to me and he said, look, I need these Marvel figures, okay, can you make them? And you have to paint them. So that's one of the first things I did. He has an entire collection of those. But uh, apart from the fun part, obviously I use it for a lot of so all the pots, the vases that you see, the geometric pattern, I was experimenting with some series of, let's say, what if a designer or an architect like us would prepare something, some pots or something to contain. Obviously it has to start with geometry. There's a fancy chair that I had made. I'll talk about that in the coming slides probably. Now that I had one machine, I figured out, or I found that people are actually making other machines, not only 3D printers out of 3D printers, but I ended up making a CNC router out of a 3D printer. So the first image here shows you all the parts which were in the CNC router, a very simple router with entirely 3D printed parts, almost 90%, apart from the MDF uh, panels that we see, which could also be 3D printed, but I mean, it was time consuming. So a very simple science of attaching motors to each axis and then attaching it with pulleys and belts wherever you want the axis to move. So here it is based on, again, three axes. What you see are two long tubes. The router is a hand router we use in carpentry. It's a palm router, a Makita router, very cheap one. Until now, we would use it to make slots for those drawers and everything. But once you mount it and once you know you can control the machine in the exact amount of space that you want. Let's say I want to make a line worth 200 mm. Once I feed the machine somehow, adjust the firmware, I can plant anything over the head. So if there was a pen there, I could have drawn a huge sheet. I could have drafted a working drawing out of it, literally. If you attach a cutter on it, and if you have vinyl banners, you can actually cut the vinyl in the shape that you want. So the only limitation probably, or your creativity, lies in how you design the mount. If there was something else over it, if you attach a ceramic nozzle and you load it with a lot of clay, you would end up creating a pot, an actual life size pot. So I used it for routing, milling sheets of plywood and MDF, and which is not bad. The signboard that you see in the middle is made on the same machine. The wall clock, the very famous IKEA wall clock, which again was a demand from that friend of mine. We don't do that. Please don't copy designs. It's a big brand. Unless they don't see it, it's fine. So that was one thing I made for him. And that's one of the first things we make. If we the moment an architecture student sees laser cutter, I think the only idea that we go beyond is, if we don't have a bike. If we have a bike, we will end up designing a number plate for our bike. If not a bike, then the first product we make is a wall clock, a very fancy wall clock. So yeah, that was that. Now this is a very recent picture, which again, this is the third machine that I made with my 3D printer, which is another CNC router with a limited desk space. If you have a limited space and you need a rigid machine, then this was the answer of it. The mechanics are very simple. It moves on hollow SS tubes, stainless steel tubes, and the parts are fixed with ball bearings. So in a circular section. So at every tangent there is a bearing. If you imagine it at 45 degrees in section, so it rolls on the curve of the circle. A very smart design. This is not my design, by the way. These are open source designs which you can download right now. If you have a 3D printer, you can print it in a week's time and you can assemble the machine in 2 days. That's all I did, because I needed to make furniture with these machines. So I had to make machines in order to make furniture. That's how I I kind of thought about it. And we can buy a CNC router. We do have an industrial CNC router at my workshop, but it just doesn't work. Every 6 months, every 3 months, it needs maintenance, and it's so fancy that people here are unable to repair it. There was a time we used to call people from Germany directly, until thankfully they ended up having a center in Bangalore. So you guys are blessed, we aren't. uh, so that's a other machine that we have. You can see three axes. You can see the five motors clearly. Four motors on each end of an axis, and the fifth one on the Z, which is the center part where the router would mount. Um, Now, of course, I have done a lot of experimentations of my own. When I had it in my workshop, we had these woodworking clamps, and one of the lever of the clamps broke. Then a lot of them broke, actually, 4 to 5. and you don't find these. I mean, where would you find these sort of pieces of hardware? No one sells them, and no one makes them. You cannot. So then probably I thought maybe I should try to fix it. So the first image is the piece taken out of a working clamp, and the second image on the right is a 3D printed clamp. If there was if I was to color it, I don't think we would have been able to make a difference out of it. But yeah, I drafted, I drew it, I took measurements of the lever, and I just modeled it in CAD very fast and took a light print, and it works. It's there even now. It has not broken yet. So I think so people who have a question as to how utilitarian are 3D prints, can we actually use them? I have used them in clamps, and I don't think there's anything great that we need. uh, and for people are using it in automotive today. A lot of automobile industries have actually shifted to using 3D printed products in their actual products in their machineries. um, so yeah, thought is the this is another weird example of a quick fix in your home. One of the hangers of a it's a jet spray or something, or of a pipe. So the screws were left loose from the wall, and the original hanger being in metal, it had rusted. So I took it off again, made a very quick drawing, modeled it, printed it, and there it stays. I knew exactly where the screws fit. I knew exactly the diameter of the screws. Everything is measured. This is reverse engineering. So you have a product and you take out dimensions from it, you feed it in the software, and you model it um, exactly as you see it. So that's the process of reversing the design process, where where you don't design and get a product, but you extract the design, the drawings from a product. So this worked well. um, that's a quick time lapse of the hanger thing that I made. I'll take you through this in detail. This software is Shaper 3D. It's a 2 3 year old software probably. The only bad thing is it is exclusive to Mac and iPad right now. They will eventually plan it for Windows. This is the best product design software that you can have today, since 2 3 years probably. Nothing gives you quick fixes or quick modeling than this, and I'll show you why we need to even move over SketchUp, which has been dominating since 10 years. When I was in school in architecture college, there was nothing, there was only SketchUp which was new. uh, so yeah, I'll just stop. This is going to, I'll take you through that. And now this is an example of a stool, a table that I was designing in reality. It was to be made with sheets of plywood, parametric. Everyone is all parametric stuff now. This was one iteration I was working on, wherein the table mimics the look of a cloth, or if you leave a piece of cloth on a table, uh, this is how it would flow. It would fly with these weird patterns. So I did it in Rhino Grasshopper, and I was like, until we wait for my huge router to fix, it never got fixed. So I was never able to. I still have to make this table. By the time it was figuring out other things, I thought, why not 3D print it and test? So I kept it hollow from the bottom, and then when I had the piece on my table, I realized that now that I have this scale model, I can use it as some sort of holder. So what started off as a table in inverted form, if you just if you look at it in a different way, it's a stationary holder now, and it's there on my table. So you never think while designing what could be the possibilities of one product that you design. Probably when you scale it up or when you scale it down, you realize I can do so much more with this. If you have it in your hand, you will realize how much you can do with it. When I designed it, I never thought of it to look like a vase or look like a stationary holder. When I had it in my hand and I just inverted it down, and I knew, okay, I can store things in it. So it's there. That's another. chair that I was working on, a very good lounger. Now we can all identify it's a very clear image of Frank Gehry's first chair, the cardboard chair, very popular design. Uh, the only limitation of it was rigid, because back then I don't think they had laser cutters, or everything was done manually. So one section was cut manually. So the straighter the section, the better to cut. I thought, what if, what if we could have those amazing curves that Charles and Ray Eames used to give to their furniture? That slight amount of curve of comfort, it matters the most. So I mixed both of them. And again, this was to be fabricated in a similar way in birch ply. I had imagined it to be stacked, layers of plywood stacked and then polished and whatever. Even that is yet to be done. So I 3D printed it very easy, a single line 3D print. It barely took 20 minutes or something. And I know the amount. I 3D printed a lot of pieces actually, so that I could get the curve right. So before doing it actually in wood, on wood, and discarding it, I knew how much amount of curve I need for the backrest, how much curve do I need for the seat, because it was right in front of me on a scale model, which is fine. So then I went back to the software and then I readjusted. Just imagine if I didn't have this, if I didn't have the possibility of creating it, um, I would have to make it on 1:1 scale, sit on it, try so many iterations, again remodel, remake, going back to the desk, going back to the workshop. It's all labor intensive, nothing else. Um, that's another video. I think, you can have a look at it. That's the enclosure of the 3D printer, again made by 3D printed parts. So those are the base standoffs, and the hinges are 3D printed, so you don't need any additional hardware. The hinges sit exactly on the base standoffs. They work like a pivot. Very simple mechanism. Just four wooden plywood legs sit on it, and then you cover it on the sides with acrylic. That's the top. So it's fixed from the bottom, from the top. There's no way for the acrylic to escape. There are grooves in the hinge. If you see, that is where the acrylic fix. And so it's there. uh, I didn't require any aluminum metal hinge apart from the stock of ply that I had and acrylic sheets. The entire main machinery of the cabinet is 3D printed, and it works. It even works right now. So the fear of maybe it's light, it's plastic, it's delicate, it will break, it does not break at all. That's that's something I've been doing in my workshop. It's the kind of furniture we try to do. Uh, so those are what you would call, if you type in parametric furniture, these are the sort of examples that you get everywhere. These are these images that use stacked plywood and they have spaces in between. You give one, you just draw one section and then you keep on repeating them in the name of parametricism, but it's wrong. Parametric is when you can adjust the exact amount of curve according to the comfort of a lot of users within the given space to use. So for example, if I had to make a 5 feet wide bench, and I could be able to turn that comfort curve anywhere. Let's say there was only one place on that bench that I sit. The other place I just keep a book, or probably it holds something. My software should be able to give me iterations that I have to feed parameters in the software. That is parametric design. This is very easy to do. It's just one section repeated, but it mimics. So yeah, why not? No, that's something with furniture that I've been trying to do. The domino chair was actually, it's very funny. It was actually commissioned to people of Domino's, but it never got sold because of weight issues. So we sold it off to our amazing clients with dining tables, and they were happier than anything. Like they were like, "Oh, we've not seen this anywhere. Okay, take it." So it's heavy, which is why probably these cafe outlet people or restaurant people would hesitate to buy. Then they love things done in fiber, very light, very good to stack. One person can carry 4 to 5 chairs. That's all they want. There are certain tables, certain sets of furniture that we've done. All of these were I put these because they are all being made by on a CNC router with the minimum efforts taken by a carpenter. Only assembly and only fitting. I mean, if we were to do it traditionally, I don't think we could, without huge scale plots, with every piece being placed on a sheet of paper and then routing it manually. There's no other option that we can think of. So when you have a machine, the point is, when you have something, you know how I can exploit this machine, I'd say. If we are to repeat something done in a conventional method and do it on a machine, it saves time. But what more can I do with it? How better can I make furniture, or how better can my product be with the aid of fabrication techniques and tools? Don't think that I only ended up getting a finer detail of the product because of the machine, but you should be able to exploit the machine in a way that someone should look at the product and say, oh, there was no way any person could make this, only a machine can make this. Today a lot of people come to us and they are like, yeah, but labor is manual labor, what you do manually will sell. But no, that's not how it should be. And people are hesitant to shift, to make the shift. Expense, maintenance, but what it gives you, the product that you make with a machine, the furniture that you create, it stays long. It's If you have the right machine, the right ideas and materials, you can make something which is immortal, and I can say that. So it never decays if you know how to do it rightly. And no matter how much of efforts you put with your own hands, though you get the best skilled carpenter, it's human intervention in the end. It cannot make you a perfect product. um, the same amount of furniture that we installed at a lot of different sites. The first image is a cafe we did in Mumbai, and we made the tables, the dining table and the chairs. Everything else was already done by them. So the chair is interesting. Again, sort of static parametric, not entirely parametric. But the table here is interesting. We came up with these tables a few years ago when uh, back painted glass was something very new in the market. So every hospital that you visit, the best of the hospitals would have these corridors with back painted glass. It was a new thing. It was there in Leelavati and Bridge Candy in Mumbai. That is, they had huge 12 feet, 14 feet back painted glass in their corridors, and it's amazing. So then my father actually came up with this idea of putting up, using back painted glass in everyday furniture, and why not? And we had clients visiting us, and when we showed them the tables, they were like, this is not glass, you are faking, this is acrylic. How can glass be on the top of a table? How can it be on top of anything? Probably they didn't understand. And back then there were no back painted glass shutters in kitchen. Now you get kitchens with back painted glass shutters which look amazing. So we had to actually break the glass tops in order to prove to them that it's not acrylic and it's glass. We've even done that. um, the finish that it gives is, if we look at the edge, these are all concealed. The corners are covered with something known as edge banding. It's a process of fitting uh, a PVC band in the thickness of your laminate. So the exact laminate that you have on the top, it is covered on the sides with a laminate in PVC. There's a machine for that. There's an edge banding machine. The advantage of this is all four sides of your board are covered with another material. So speaking of waterproofing, if I would even hide particle board inside of it, I wouldn't do that. But if I would, uh, again it's waterproof because water never enters that layer of the core board inside. It will always stay on top because my board is actually covered on all sides. It is heat pressed with the aid of a machine, so it can never be removed. So it's it's just how you know how to use the materials. Now it's not something new. The edges of any table have been covered since ages. If you see the way a carpenter would do it is he would take a cutter and he would strip out strips of laminate in 18 mm, 20 mm, whatever the thickness of the top, and then they would put Fevicol, stick it, then they would put Abro tapes on it, masking tapes, and then they would corner it with nails. They will keep it for a day, 2 days, they will take off the nails and then they will take off the tapes. And then that they'll expect that the edge, the band stays, but it never stays. In a matter of a few months, it comes off. So if it is done with the proper techniques, the proper machines, it never comes off. So the edges are concealed, the top is in glass, you don't see the edge of a glass. So if you look closely, you will never be able to identify if it's a 20 mm. It looks like the entire thickness is glass, but obviously it is cladded with glass because you don't see the edges and the corners. The second example is from one of the gymnasiums that we did, and these are just benches in between for rest. Now, the other question would, or if you talk about this, someone would be like, so what scale? Okay, I can 3D print showpieces, superhero figures, small pots, small cups. No. So the first image is of the very famous conventional kit 3D printers, which is for objects to be placed on your desk probably. The second is a ceramic 3D printer, a clay 3D printer. Yes, we've gone that far. Today you can actually create clay pots, and if you look at the image, you know what kind of clay pots can you create. I don't think there's any way to create those manually, because if you sit on that turning platform, you know it's only going to go around. There's no other angle, or there's no other way of geometry that you can apply on that pot. So again, clay 3D printing is something new. The best part of it, the best scale, I think, is that people are actually 3D printing structures today. The third image that you see is right here in India, nowhere abroad, nowhere in the States, nowhere in the Europe. Um, this is the first 3D printed house, a dwelling unit, printed entirely in concrete on site with a robotic arm 3D printer. This is done by IIT Madras alumni whose research was on similar lines, and they ended up developing and testing it in the campus itself. So that lies on the campus. And I mean, they are working. If you call them up today and tell them I have a building I need to get 3D printed, they'll do it for you. So it's not future prospects, it's not something developing, it's there. People don't know about it, people don't want to use it. You'd say, why a 3D printed house? How does it benefit? There is no RCC, junk of RCC, there are no bricks in it. uh, the entire house is in concrete. Okay. And it does not have to be the entire thickness of a block. If we have a 230 wall, there is a 230 solid brick somewhere in the wall at all places. That thickness, that weight, that material is gone. The way 3D printing works is, if you need a 9 inches wall, a 230 wall, probably only 50 of both the outer shells are in concrete. The entire thing in between is hollow. You might not want it, but even if you fill it with concrete, it is of no good use. The advantage you get is, throughout the length of the entire wall you have a cavity. You can put whatever insulation you want. If you want heat, or if you want to restrict cold, uh, there is an option. If you don't want to insulate, do not put anything, it's fine. It is as good as a concrete built home or a structure. So why not? It weighs less, it cuts down your cost of the concrete by exactly 30%. Weighs a lot less because it's entirely hollow, entirely stable. All your columns, beams, roof, everything, all elements are 3D printed. There is no amount of scaffolding required, no amount of formwork, framework, no molds, nothing other than concrete and a robotic arm. No man required, in fact, no human required. You can just install the machine and stand at a distance and keep looking at it for hours. it will just keep doing it. So I don't understand. I mean, if I had an option, if I have an option that I don't need to go for site visits, none of my laborers need to be there, uh, I have no risks of people and nothing. I mean, it's just a machine and it's doing its job somewhere in some part of the world. Why would I not use it? And why should we not train people to use it? I'm not saying let us snatch jobs, but let us create jobs, better jobs for those people who are um, throughout the day, who are actually anyway. So that's the part of the story. But yeah, if that is the quality of a structure I get with 3D printing, I mean, I need nothing else. And probably if the entire structure is in concrete, again, why would that be bad? And I can paint it in whatever shapes I want. I can have the right amount of conduits, spaces for lines, water, everything, pipes, wires, everything is pre-planned. um, so why not make the shift again? um, Another example, a very good example, I mean, at least this should excite us. The other application is set design or movie props. So these are stills from different images. The first is from the newest or the last Jurassic Park movie. So that dinosaur is actually 3D printed, by the way, in a scale model which was enlarged on screen, obviously. And if you go back and look at the older movies and probably compare, you'll understand that okay, this time the dinosaur really looked real, for a change. Because it is that they have scanned the actual bodies of dinosaurs from the fossils, and then they remodeled it on software, and then they printed the entire body, which is why it is real. There's no software level of animation or body work required. uh, the other image is from Black Panther. It is an amazing movie in terms of the props, and if you look at the sets, the way they have used technology. Let's not speak of the story or whatever, but if you look at the props, specifically the costumes, most of the costumes in the movie Black Panther were 3D printed, including your king's helmet, if that excites you. It was entirely 3D printed. Everything, every costume of it was 3D printed. And not only that, I think Marvel has used 3D printing in a lot of movies. So in the recent Thor, I think the last Thor or whatever, his hammer, his axe, all of those were 3D printed. So if you ask me, I mean, even now, if people ask, no, utility is doubtful or something, then no, you have seen it, you have yelled at it on screen. I mean, it's working. The last poster, last image is from Star Wars, where you can see the entire suit, the entire armor is 3D printed and painted over. So no metal, no dye. I don't have to rely on any manufacturers. I don't have to hunt for manufacturers. I can create whatever I want. I can create a living being. I can create an animal. I can create a suit. I can create a hat. I can 3D print an entire set for you. Like, it's like someone will do that. I mean, someone will do that. We don't need outsourcing jobs anymore. So it's everywhere now. If you see, you can actually, if we think about it, we are living in a time where uh, at a point, maybe your everyday objects, your house, the movies that you see, uh, everything will be made from a machine. Everything would be 3D printed, and to the scale that, I mean, there was a satellite which was launched, the first 3D printed, the lightest satellite launched by NASA is a 3D printed satellite, and you should be proud that it was 3D printed in India by some school boy, not any engineer, some school kid 3D printed the satellite, and NASA sent it. So we've seen varied uses of it. Now let's see something quite unexpected, or when something you might not expect or not know of. Food. So the last is very, I don't know, I had to do this to make the presentation light. Yes, you can 3D print food. A few years ago, if someone, we always had these debates, and you'd say technology is this, that. The only answer these old uncles or old people would give is, I will not be impressed with technology until it gives me food. If there is a technology that makes food for me, then I'm sold. So here you are. Um, the people were excited when Zomato and Swiggy took over. I can order food right from the comfort of my couch without moving. So okay, now we can make food right from the comfort of your couch without moving. And there's no freezing, there's no baking, no waiting. You have food made on your kitchen platform right in front of you. And the best part is you can design your own food. So the first image is not a fake image. It's an image by a person who 3D printed pizzas for the astronauts of NASA, because there should be a way that we should be able to make food in space. Until now, there was no option. They tested it. They took the 3D printer in space. They printed food. They had food, and then NASA ended up funding that man. And he actually, I don't know, he maybe does this right now. He just makes food 3D printers. Why not? The second image is of cake pastries. Who doesn't love pastries? And if an architect was to design cakes, we know we would make wonders. So that's one of the examples of 3D printing in food, pastries, pizzas, whatever you want. You want someone's face on your food? Yeah, we'll give you that. So there's no bounds. There are no boundaries. As I said, the limitation is only the nozzle that you attach on the machine's head. That is the only limitation. Whatever I can think of pouring into that head, into the extruder, the machine can make that happen. So I mean, if a machine can make food for me, then this is the end. Probably I don't know how much further I need to think, or maybe I don't know how much I can think. So that's the end of the presentation from my side. We can take questions, everyone from the students. I hope you all are not sleepy, I assume. I've talked a lot.
Could have your videos on as well.
Anything that you'd want to know, any simplest. Hello guys, you can speak up.
Dharmesh, you can stop the presentation. It's still sharing.
Yeah, just
I'll help you out. So yeah, students, come on. So good questions, quick questions, whatever doubts.
Can I break the ice and ask a question, Ramesh?
yeah, please.
Go ahead, go ahead.
First of all, amazing work, man. You're making Inception with just like making a 3D printer, printing parts to make a CNC router to make another CNC router.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah. That's crazy.
Coming to CNC router, yeah, in the starting you mentioned 2.5 axis. What does that mean?
So 2.5 is somewhere between 3, wherein you can cut in X and Y, but you cannot entirely lift your Z axis. All you can do is make small contours in a limited height. Only round contours, to be more specific. So you can create a subtle curve, that is 2.5. When you can actually, do this, that's an entirely 3 axis. That's the only difference.
Okay.
And one more question regarding, I mean, especially in the area of product design, what are the materials that, I mean, I was always curious about like the materials that you get to print or there's a limitation
Yeah,
because
it's very interesting. I was expecting that from the students, but yeah, let's help them out. So the most popular, the most efficient is PLA, which is polylactic acid. It is a derivative of plastic, which is the best to work with right now in 3D printing. But it doesn't stop there. As I've said, it was introduced as the material. The even previous material was ABS. and we have seen ABS actually being used in automobile parts. So you could 3D print ABS for a start. What happens is ABS requires a lot of temperature to melt, and while printing it, it gives up fumes and it smells. So then PLA was developed, which gives you the strength of ABS and it minus the fumes, minus the temperature, very easy to work with. If we speak of today, you can 3D print nylon. I think that's something. You can 3D print carbon fiber. There is no end. I mean, if I can 3D print carbon fiber, I don't think I
Right,
need
right,
to
right.
find anything else. That's the end. Plastic,
So,
carbon
hmm,
fiber, wood, wood and metal, but they are sort of fake because they are plastics infused with wood and metal fibers. So you cannot print metal, but what you print is has constituents of wood and metal in it. So it mimics the look of metal, you can say.
so all these materials, do they always have to come in like a threaded form, or can
Yes,
we have like a powdered or
no,
something
there
like?
is, that's the only, how the machines are designed. So they take
Hmm,
up these rolls of filament in 1.75 mm diameter. That's
hmm,
the standard available. And 3 mm diameters. There are two. You get it in the form of rolls, and you feed it, and that filament will melt at a certain point, and it comes out of the nozzle, and that's how it works. When we do clay, for example, then what do you do? Or maybe when I say there are people 3D printing buildings, then what happens? You'll say concrete I can't make a roll. So what happens
hmm.
in clay is they have something like an injector, a
Like,
huge
right.
cylinder space, and a very simple injection mechanism. When you push from one side, it comes out from the other, but that injector is controlled, so the amount of clay that you need to fall on the platform is controlled. In case
Hmm,
of concrete 3D printing, if you are to build structures,
hmm.
the quantity of concrete is controlled by another motor,
Right.
by the arm itself. So that's how that is done. It all comes down to options, what you feed to the machine. I mean, you will get it.
So,
That's
okay, just one last question, and then I think students should be able to open up. So, as a modeler, do you feel that there are some limitations to any form or anything, maybe thickness or anything that you have faced in this whole world of 3D printing?
the only limitation in 3D printing is cantilevers. As architects, I can say this. I could not
Hmm.
explain it to a layman because the way 3D printing works is you need to have a layer below in order to create a layer above. If you don't
Right.
have something here, my machine cannot print in the air. It will actually fall down the material. So the limitation is in the world of 3D printing, it is termed as an overhang.
Okay.
The limitation is that you can go 40 degrees. Uh, that's the limit, 40 degrees, because that's how much you can, if you make a 40-degree angle, and if you draw
Hmm.
layers, that's permittable. The layer can sit
Okay.
on it. If you
Okay.
exceed that, the structure fails, the product fails. That's the
Okay.
only limitation. But there is a way around that. It cannot fail if you have a base, so that is where supports come in. So I need to
Props.
build
Yeah.
supports. The
Hmm.
machine makes supports, but the only thing is that material is waste. The amount of support is actually to be discarded, but you get your structure made. So the only cost is those huge cantilevers, nothing else.
No, but for a scale of a product design, like maybe as like something, is
On
there
a
any
scale of
limitation that?
a, yeah, for a product design, if you don't want supports, 40 degrees overhangs are allowable. That is something the machine will handle. If you exceed, you can have supports. I mean, well and good, why not? Otherwise, there was no way to create that sphere, spherical on the lamp that I showed.
Right, right,
How
right,
would
right.
you create a sphere? It is only possible with supports.
So that's 3D
So,
printing glass as well, right?
yeah, all in fibers, not
Fibers,
in
yeah, yeah.
actual
Right, right.
materials.
Glass
But I
fibers. Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if there is plastic, if there is nylon, if there is carbon fiber, then I don't think I need to
Right,
look
right,
beyond. I don't have
right.
to search. And it's not like it is being done somewhere. Right here in India, at your place, you can 3D print carbon at your home, carbon fiber and nylon. We are getting filaments here. People are making it in India. So it's no more like maybe if I want to see 3D printing, I'll have to find out a college which gives me an exchange program. to go. That's what we did, right? So that's not right, by the way. But yeah, I'm just kidding. If we had to see machinery, it was always like maybe I should go to the US for masters or Australia. Otherwise, I mean, and then the problem is there because if your masters involves 2 years of monitoring a machine, how in the hell can you come back to India and work? And then people say if you do masters from somewhere, I mean, you have to stay there. It's not wrong. It's not their fault. They are trained in a way that people don't work here. If they come here and again they have to sit on a desk, that's weird. That's a wastage of 2 years that you studied. So we are doing it, we are adapting it, but problem is not more people are utilizing it, not more institutes, I should say, are opening up their gates to these techniques. And that's a huge problem. Whenever I mean, now there are very institutions are very good in understanding what how much of a workshop space we need to give to the students. I think when I did my bachelor's, I never saw a hammer in my college. And I still can't, I mean, come over the fact how did I learn architecture without looking at a workshop. So that's my story. It was different, it was bad maybe, but the point is you need to evolve. If you sit with the syllabus, if you keep teaching drawings for 5 years, and then probably at some point you're like now people are not building structures, machines are building structures. So then why are we training architects to make drawings? Why don't we train them to probably control machines in a certain form? Maybe as an elective, maybe as a choice. Don't bombard them with it. Probably no one wants to do that. But if they get out 5 years later, if a first year student joins architecture today, 5 years is a huge amount of time. In the coming 5 years, by the time he or she graduates, maybe what if they realize you are not even required as a draftsman? If there's a software that gives me everything, what will you do? It's it's damn tough. And the more you control machines, the more you get into this, the easier it gets, because uh, people fear, I mean, on a broader, on a world level, if we have a discussion, there's like machines will take over humans. It's not uh, just, I mean, it's a human who made the machine. A machine never made a human. This was quoted by Jack Ma once in an interview. A very, very, very good guy. And this was quoted by him to stop Elon Musk, by the way. I can never forget that interview, wherein it was literally war of machines and labor. So then Musk was like, I can have a machine doing this. I can have a machine making a car. And he was like, you heard of a machine making a human? And he just stopped. He could not speak. So it's true. What humans can do, humans can do with machines is different than what probably a machine could do with them. You need that. In the end, it is you who are controlling the machine. The machine will not control you, and it does not know what to do. If you cannot feed in information to a machine that make me a coffee or make me a G+2 structure, it will do nothing for you. The information has to be fed by you. The information is made by you. So it's not a threat. But I don't understand people. And these whoever is against it, if you ask them, have you seen it, they're like, no. The worst is people have never experienced that, and they sit for discussions and they are like, no, it's not working, it is destroying jobs. What will laborers do? What if you train the laborer to operate the machine? We had people in our workshop who joined as carpenters. Today they are working on every machine. They are uneducated. They never saw those machines anywhere else, and they've realized it posed a threat to them at once, because even they were of the same opinion. But if you have one person on a machine, and if five people were doing the job for you, that one person is doing the same amount of job in probably 1/10 of the time, not even half, I would say 1/10. So what is bad in that? There's nothing bad in that. So it all pays off if you speak on teamwork, if you speak about groups, everything. If you speak about the finesse, the detail, there is no negative aspect only against space consumption, electricity consumption, and investment. That's all. I don't think apart from money and time, it stops anywhere.
Thank you, Ramesh. Ramesh, I have one other question. You made it
Yeah.
look very simple of like doing everything. Just one product, like a one 3D printer machine is what we need. But would you tell us
Right.
the
It's
cost
true.
easily?
Yeah, I thank you. You asked for that. I had actually noted things down for the students, but yeah. So you can buy a 3D printer right now in somewhere between 15 to 20,000 rupees. You can do that right now on Amazon. There are printers, and if you build those yourselves, you can get a 3D printer under 8 to 10,000. Okay, which is I think every student can afford. If you ban pizzas for a year, probably you can make 5 3D printers in a year. If, so
DIY.
it's
Yeah.
not a lot. It's not a lot, and it's not. Why would you build one? Even I knew people making 3D printers. I knew I can buy, but then I had to. Otherwise, I would not be able to make other machines. Probably I would stop at buying the 3D printer and then thinking what I'd make with this. I have the machine now. What? So the
And the
process is a learning
CNC cutter, how
process.
much did it cost for you? Because you made it on your own. So that's one.
Yeah, so the CNC cutter costs somewhere around 30,000, which is again not that bad. If you upgrade it to a good now, I
And
was
the
testing.
imported CNC cutter that you have.
That should not be asked. But anyway, I didn't put it for the presentation. I mean, that is from a German brand, which is Homag Group.
No,
We
no. I
bought
asked a
that.
question so that the students understand the
Yeah,
comparison of.
I'll tell you. Yeah. So the industrial level we have was somewhere around 1.2 crores, somewhere 12 to 15 years ago. So that was a huge amount we invested in. That was the biggest mistake I would say, because we were illiterate to operate it. I was in my architecture that time. I was not even there. My father bought it, and till now I think, what did he even think when he bought the machine or even thought of buying it? So it involves a lot of maintenance. The problem is people get fascinated by these fancy cars. It's like, why everyone doesn't buy a Lamborghini, or why don't we have Mercedes, Audi? You can save up for your life and buy a car worth 1 crore or maybe 80 lakhs, but how do you maintain that car? We can drive in it for a day or two, but if I can't drive in it for 10 years, I mean, it's a waste for me. uh, Only for the show off, I bought it for a day, but I could never use it. There's no point. The fuel, the same cases with the machine, the maintenance. If it does not run for 24 hours, if it does not run for even 8 to 10 hours, within a month it will stop working. uh, because in a workshop there are things like wood dust, MDF, the corrosion of metal. The worst is the machine was tested and made for Germans. If you get such a machine in India, where you have rainfall, you have all sorts of worse things in the environment. We cannot breathe here. Let us not speak of anything else. Our workshop is in Vasai, in Mumbai, which is a bit far off from Mumbai. And when it rains, it floods like crazy there. It's entirely an industrial area, so it's very bad. A machine cannot perform in such cases, and the worst is if you then when we tell them, then they will you know chipkaw you with lubricants. Take this oil will get rid of all the rust in your machine. Okay, where do I get this oil? We will provide it to you. Where does it come from? It comes from Germany. There was no way. We could not even get a screw, a piece of bolt of that machine here. There was no one had it. No one knew it. I mean, it was funny, but of course, with all those things said, I have never seen a machine so fine when it performed. There is nothing beyond German engineering, that I can say. The precision and the way it works, but at what cost? What are you developing? Are you doing something with metal? Do you need such a huge machine? So then, probably years later, this was my question when I sat down with the printer stuff, and I was like, uh, I need a CNC, but what do I need to make? Probably small furniture pieces. I am not making an entire structure, a huge, I don't need to cut a huge 8 by 4 feet sheet. I need something within 3 by 3 feet that will do for me. So then I made a CNC router. I was like, take, and everyone was surprised. They were like, how is this possible? My father could not believe it. He was like, are you crazy? How can you do this? He for once he thought I brought the entire thing from somewhere and assembled it. He never understood what I did. Nobody understood what I did. So it's crazy. If only you do something, people will understand, and it's very easy. So 10,000 for a 3D printer, probably 30-35 for a CNC router. In India, people are manufacturing those DIY CNC machines, which come up to 70 to 75,000. They price it at that. If you make, we can even make those machines. If you make them, it will cost you 40 to 50,000 on your own. So it is no more an expensive science, which was 10 to 15 years back. Everything is, and once you understand, I mean, so recently, I am also a faculty in Krivia in Kamla Raja, Mumbai. So they wanted to make a shake table where we can test earthquake tremors, or we can simulate the movements caused by an earthquake for the students, so that they can place their models on a platform and they can understand how will the structure work or not. It's a very simple machine. I had never heard of it till now. My college didn't have it. I had nothing to do with earthquakes in my master's program. Gotham is here. We had nothing to do with it. Far off. We were only into code design. So I just asked them, how does it work? Just tell me. And they were like, we need a platform which moves in two directions. I was like, I can do that. I can do that, but I don't know I don't know about the units of your calculation and all. They said, we'll figure it out. They've been trying, contacting a lot of people, a lot of expensive quotations, and then I figured out something. I gave them a drawing at the entire BOQ the next day, and it ended up getting even less than half the cost. The quotation ended up coming almost half of what they were planning for. So uh, that's the learning. A machine is also a development or a design product. If you make one, you understand. Now I know I can move three axes of a machine. I can create a machine that can move in three directions. Probably I can make anything. I don't know. We can, if we know that, we can move anything, right? Only the parts need to be longer or shorter, maybe. Otherwise, it's the science is the same. So that's the deal. I mean, people should, and as students, everyone should at least not into machine making, I'd say, but look at the prospects of this. Create something on your own. Right now it is very easy. All you need to do is learn a few softwares and keep it ready. If there is a probability somewhere, if you have a 3D printer somewhere at your institute, know someone, why not do those trial and errors? Why not have it done, or why not make it? I mean, everything is possible. So we should not stop. There's a website, RepRap, reprap.org. It's a short form for replicating machines or something. That is where all of this started. So they are the ones who invented 3D printing or the machine in the first place. So they figured out how you can make a machine move, and then you can make any scale machine with that. You should go through these. There is Prusa, Prusa. Prusa is the name of printers, which builds the best brand in creating open source printers. They sell 3D printers. They are not in India, obviously. They don't sell. They are based in Czech Republic. But the good thing that they do is they provide all the model files for the 3D printer that they build. So if you have a 3D printer, if you know of a service, you get the parts printed. The rest is mechanical and electronic components, which is easier to source, and you have your 3D printer at your home. So either buy it or build it. I mean, I don't think this amount of flexibility is available in any product. No one would give you the details of the product such that you can build or make the product at your home. No one. Even if you make food from the recipe, it is never going to taste the same. So it's nothing is like it. I mean, it's it's very the community is very good. Just imagine if there was some patent on 3D printing, the guy would have been like ahead of time right now. He would have earned so much. But some genius, some good people thought, let us keep it open source. Let us have that makers community expand to the world, and that's what's happening right now. We in India we don't have maker fairs, but wherever they happen, it's amazing to see those maker fairs. People, there are literally robots serving you drinks, food, and those robots are made by someone. It's not industrial anymore. Everyone is making a machine in that expo and showing it off. It's so interesting. If we could do this here, and just imagine, I mean, what not? It's fun. We should move towards it. So that's the cost. Along with that, I think 1 kg of filament roll costs around 1,000 rupees. That's a standard 1,000 to 1,200. 1,000 rupees is for PLA. 12 to 1,500 is for PETG, PET, which is PET, or your water bottles are made of. That is a strong plastic. So if you want to test your 3D prints for machine or weatherproof applications, you want to take it out, then you should be printing it in PETG. Uh, so that is PLA, PETG. Then if you are creating bikes or cars, then there is nylon and carbon fiber, which are 2,500 per kg or 3,000 per kg. They are expensive because of the process that involves making them. So even if you see the cost of filament, it's not much, and it is exactly equal to the amount of weight that your product has. So, and you get it in the software. So if you Google, as students, I would urge you to Google for slicer or slicing softwares for 3D printing. A very small softwares. You can watch tutorials online and you'll understand. It gives you an estimate of the weight of your model and how much time it will take to print. So when you model it on CAD, as I said, CAD is basically plotting software. It does no good. When you make a 3D and you export it into the slicing software, it will tell you, okay, this will weigh 300 grams in real time, and it will take 8 hours to 3D print. So you put it and you go to sleep, and by the morning you have your model. So you know exactly the amount of filament it is going to consume. So if 1,000 rupees for a kg, 300 gram, my model costs this much. Now if you are selling it off, you know how much I should charge. If my printer works for 8 hours a day, I know the unit charge of electricity at my workshop or my factory or my home. I can add everything, and it's 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 an easy calculation. So no, it's not expensive. That's what I'm trying to say. Even as a student, you can do crazy stuff.
Thank you, Dharmesh. Any other doubts, students?
At least I don't know.
From the student side, yeah.
Put up your cameras at least. It would be good to see
Yes,
some
who was it?
faces.
Shreya Kishore, is it? Yeah,
Yeah,
Shreya.
yeah. Hi.
I just wanted to ask if we were to start with 3D printing, like for us, we are beginners, right? How much
Right.
space would we be looking at? अगर घर पे set करना हो तो?
The space that you have your desktop PC right now or a laptop, to 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet, 450 by 450 is the space that a 3D printer takes. So you can mark that space somewhere, put masking tape, and maybe uh, one day I'll do something. You can mark the territory. So it's a small space, and that space printer will give you a printing area of 220 by 220 which is roughly 8 by 8 inches, and in height 250, so 10 inches. I think which is not bad. If it were 8 by 8 inches and 250 is a lot for a product. Uh, so not bad at all for a start point. I have the same size 3D printer and I've made a huge machine out of it. So I don't know if it's a limitation. It's never a limitation. Unless you want to 3D print furniture at some point, then we need to. But that's a way. I don't think anyone would want to 3D print chairs and tables. We are yet to do that.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, so 450 by 450 mm and in height 500 mm. That's all. It's a cube. It's a simple cube.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
Anyone else? Anything? Any other cost involvement? Anything with furniture, product, wood? I mean, at least after this, maybe as a further reading or further explorations, all of you should look at uh, this science. And for a start, I would urge you to start with the Fusion 360, which is the software used by product designers to manufacture products. It is time to at second year, maybe till third or fourth year, you should be using CAD. I'm not saying no, but we need to upgrade. I mean, and Fusion 360 is a software by Autodesk itself. So what it does is it is one software which will give you a 3D model. You can render it. You don't need to. The same software will send it to your 3D printer for 3D printing, and the same software will send the file to your CNC router for cutting it on a router. So you don't need to have this 3 4 5 softwares, AutoCAD planning, then SketchUp 3D modeling, Photoshop rendering, probably V-Ray or some other plugin which gives you no. In terms of fabrication, it is very easy. You start the model right on the software. So Fusion 360 is a software where you start drafting, where you give it a 3D extrusion, where you give it a code, and you have the choice of exporting it to 3D printing to a router or a laser cutter right from that software. It is very intuitive, very interesting, and the best part is it is free for students and faculties. So there's no harm. Do it right now. Like, what are you waiting for? And YouTube is your friend here. I don't have to mention, since the last 2 years, I don't know, if nothing, then it's all this YouTube that has been explored. So why not use it for our good? If we have internet which is cheap right now, do something good out of it.
Any other
So a
questions,
lot of
students?
information. Yeah, anything else?
If not, we'll conclude the class. That's why. Okay, I believe no other questions then. Thank you, Dharmesh. It was really a
Okay.
wonderful presentation. It's a delight to have you here.
Thank
And
you so much for having me over.
yeah, like it's totally like we're very happy. Good information for
I
the
hope,
students, good
yeah.
inspiration as well. I'd like you to just like tell your handle Instagram so that students could also contact you later or like look at your works. What is it? Fab.
It's yeah, that the open one is Mesh Lab.
Mesh
You
Lab, yeah.
can type that, or even the personal will do.
Okay. Thank you, Dharmesh. Thanks for giving your insight.
Thank
It's
you.
lovely to have you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye bye. See ya.